Anyhow, so into the physical therapy world. You guys are, at least in my world, fairly new to the field.
Mm-hmm.
So, just part, as I was telling you, part of the podcast is just, people's journeys of how they got there, right? So whoever wants to go first, like, what was it? When did you decide that, yeah, this is physical therapy is what I want to do?
I can start first.
All right, all right.
Well, initially I wanted to do like medicine. I wanted to go into the medical field, like, because I was just so, impressed by like my own pediatrician. I was like, oh man, I want to be a pediatrician
Right.
just like that too. But I went into, I would do different um, like jobs that I would try and like do. I would go to Kern Medical to volunteer and things like that, and I would see how like difficult these doctors' lives were living, and I was like, I want a good work-life balance, honestly, and I just didn't know where to go next. So I was in my like third year of undergrad, and my friend told me about physical therapy, and I was like, oh, I don't even know what that is.
Right.
So he's like, hey, go check out a clinic and then shadow and see if you like it or not. And after I did that, I actually enjoyed it so much because I get to, see people get help into doing the things that they love and moving again, moving better. And I was like, you know what, this is what I want to do actually.
Yeah.
And so I kind of transitioned to that actually. I didn't do the normal route of like kinesiology and things like that. I stuck with my biochemistry major, which was super hard.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't even know how I did that.
That's a hard way to qualify for therapy school.
Yes, yes. But after that,
So why medicine though? Was your family in medicine?
no, I was like, I just want to be a doctor. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what like really stuck out to me. I think every time I think about it, I'm like, okay, my pediatrician had a big impact on me, I guess, and she was just a really great doctor, and I think that's why I wanted to go into medicine because I was like, oh, I want to, make someone else feel like that as well.
Right.
So.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I like that. I think similarly, my journey to physical therapy had a lot of twists and turns. Initially, I wanted to go into medicine because of my mother. She was a nurse and she was a big influence on my life, still is.
Cool.
And she would tell me about, just different opportunities in medicine, whether that be an MD, whether that be a pharmacist, whether that be a nurse. And I thought for a while pharmacy was my calling.
Right.
And so I did a similar route and I was a biochem major in undergrad. And I did great in the classes, but I had no real passion. I kind of felt like I was going through the motions. And I think it was organic chemistry, maybe like the second series of it. And I was sitting in one of my classes, just completely dozing off. And I kind of just told myself, like, are you enjoying this? Like, are you really enjoying this? And I was trying to keep up with the lectures that our professor was talking about. And I just could not find the passion to stick with the lectures. Like, it wasn't really clicking for me. So I kind of had a little bit of a heart to heart moment in that classroom. And I told myself, like, do you see yourself doing this for the next 4 years and then possibly for the rest of your life? Like, is this the way you want to go? And I knew that I wanted to be in medicine. I just didn't really know where. So I kind of had to think about my roots and what I enjoy. Mm-hmm. And being an athlete, playing sports, loving physical activity, I wanted something to follow in that realm. Okay. So I decided, sorry, I had a talk with my mom, and I was like, hey, like, I don't know if I want to become a pharmacist. Like, it's not fueling that fire or that passion that I have. And I know I want to do something in medicine. I just don't know what. And we both kind of came to the idea of, well, what about physical therapy? Okay. I didn't really know a lot about it. So let me take a quick drink.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Yeah, it's funny because it's here. I think that's a mistake a lot of people going into college make is, oh, I want to do this. Yeah. And they don't think about what the job actually will be. Mm-hmm. My youngest son was like in engineering all through high school, and the engineering program was an engineering major. And then one day I was like, you know what engineers do, right? And he's probably my most social of my kids. I said, you know what engineers do all day, right? And he was like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna be on a computer.
So
Yeah.
And there's
harsh
no
reality.
knock on
Oh,
that if
my.
that's your world, but
Yeah.
if you want to be social and interact, that's going to be limited to presenting jobs. And so I think you hit on something important when you look at it, is that what is this job going to be, and does that fit my personality?
Right.
I think too many kids look at it like, who makes the most money? Oh, I want to do that. But then if you don't have that passion, it dries up quickly.
Exactly.
Oh, absolutely.
I think the beauty in it as well is once I found out that I wanted to go into physical therapy, I spoke with a couple of physical therapists, got a gist of what the day-to-day would look like. I immediately changed my major and I was like, hey, let's go into kinesiology. Let's figure this out. And the very first couple of classes that I was in, it was exciting. You know, it was about the body. It was about movement. It was about learning these very intrinsic, motions about the body. And I was like, okay, maybe this was the passion that I was waiting to find. And I think that just slowly grew and grew and grew after each class. And sure enough, here I am now.
Right.
So I think going through that crossroads where I was already a year and a half into my undergrad and telling myself, well, now you're switching your major, which is probably going to set yourself back maybe a year.
Right.
Is it worth it? And it definitely was, because I definitely found that passion that I was itching to have when I was in those organic chemistry classes, and I had found that now that I switched my major, and the rest just kind of followed.
So what would you guys say, like, advice to either high school students or people that are now in undergrad and trying to figure it out? What advice would you give them if they figure out, like, yeah, physical therapy is what I want to do? Because I know when I went through, I was an athletic training major, but I also did a pre-physical therapy minor. Because way back then, it was like completely different. So if I'd have stayed just athletic trainer, I wouldn't have had all the sciences you needed to be accepted in physical therapy school. Right? So what advice would you give these? So they're in high school going, oh, I'm going to be a physical therapist, or they're in college like, okay, I'm not sure what I want to do. Something in the kines world, something in the medical world. What would you tell them?
I would say definitely shadow, first of all. Like, see if you even like what it looks like, what it feels like. And then even like work as an aide. I felt like that was such a big part of me deciding to go to PT school. Because I was like, I like working with patients. I like being like helping them, show them their exercises. And I like seeing how they interact with the other PTs and other patients and things like that. So that really opened my eyes to what physical therapy was all about. So that I would recommend that, like highly recommend that.
I also think the beauty with today's world is they have access to so much material via media, via YouTube, via whatnot, good and bad. But I definitely think there are very positive routes that you can kind of supervise on YouTube. I know a couple of classmates that I had in physical therapy school, they have their current YouTube programs where they discuss physical therapy and almost what it was like going through physical therapy school, but also what it's like getting into a physical therapy program. So knowing what requirements you need and what physical therapy schools base their requirements on. Certain things are focused more than others. Your GRE might not be as high on their list of on their bucket list of things versus something else. So I think finding a very reliable and trustworthy source on a YouTube channel or some type of media could also be helpful, because it'll show you kind of the ins and outs of physical therapy, but also how to get into physical therapy school and what physical therapy school is like.
And I know back then, and I'm still talking to people these days, is like how wide the field of physical therapy is.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things they still look at when you apply is, oh, you did everything in ortho, or you did everything.
Yeah.
I'm going in to be a orthotherapist or a pediatric therapist or a neurotherapist, and not experiencing all those different
So true.
fields. It still baffles me that we go through the same program and then afterwards you come out and you niche into whatever section attracts you, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I remember hearing that physical therapy had such a wide, like a variety of different ways you can become a physical therapist and help people. Yet I wasn't really able to figure that out until I actually was there. And I was like, wow, there's way more options that you can choose from. And I don't know how many other professions have that type of variety where you can choose from so many different distinct and intuitive type of forms. So
yeah, I think it's unique in that we go through the same educational process, right? And the same, then you in your internships you do it a little bit, but like with physicians, you all go through medical school, but then you have to decide, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, I'm going to be a family doctor, an internist, or a neurologist, and then it starts adding on. Oh, you want to be an orthopedic surgeon? Okay, that's another 4 years plus then residency.
That's true.
Whereas physical therapy, once you get that license, it's like, oh, I think I want to do a little bit here and a little bit there.
That's kind of like what I do now. So I think I love that. Like I love being in inpatient. I love being in an outpatient. I love kind of trying different areas of PT. So it was
just
good.
Opens the door a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm sitting in school and I've got to decide right now. Like, okay, are you going to be an orthotherapist? Or are you going to be a neurotherapist?
Because you really don't know. I think based, backing off what Jackie talked about, I think that's the beauty of being a physical therapist and then having experience in time treating patients in each one of these little niches and seeing which one you truly enjoy, whether it's outpatient, inpatient, acute, whether it's home health, SNF, you name it, like I think that's the beauty of being having the opportunity to try these and get paid for it at the same time, like that's the beauty of it.
But I think in my world, I started because I was already an athletic trainer, and I knew I was ortho sports, but I still did time in spinal cord rehab. I did time in a SNF. I did time just like, okay, I want to know. And then I knew the ones I didn't want to do too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
We have a huge pediatric division, and it's like, nope, don't go me.
I can't do that.
I'm glad we have a therapist that's their passion, but that's not me. So, and even the neuro stuff's incredible, but it's not my world, right? So, I think for me that was the cool part of physical therapy was like, oh wait, I can try some of these other things out, but it cemented that. No, I'm ortho sports. I knew in the beginning, but I tried some other things. So, let's talk a little bit about the getting into physical therapy school, right? It's still a little competitive.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Very much.
So there's undergrads. They're like, okay, I'm gonna apply next year. I think it's been quite a while since I did it, but still GPA, right?
Yeah.
Very heavy GPA.
Heavy GPA.
You need the certain prereqs. So, let's say for me, I was a biochem major and I switched to kinesiology. Well, you still need prereqs for psychology. You need some physics. You need those specific classes. So I remember having to take a couple extra semesters to get all those prereqs done and making sure I do really fairly good in the prereqs because GPA is way too heavy, but it's not the only sole thing. I have had a couple of my classmates that, they talk about their own personal stories and their GPA wasn't the best their first 2 years of undergrad. Yet when they really started to focus in on their major and focus in on their classes, their GPA looked better. So if there's a way you can persuade a certain physical therapy program, like, hey, if you look specifically towards my major classes,
science.
Exactly, I do better. But I would say on a broad spectrum, most physical therapy schools will look primarily at your GPA, and if you don't reach a certain level, you might not be, you might not pass that first requirement to go on to those other further down the line.
So GPA is important. Experience, I think, is important. Too,
lots of extracurricular stuff that we do for the community. Like I feel like that helped me a lot because my GPA wasn't the greatest. I just did a lot of community things. I traveled a lot and did like medical mission trips. So I felt like that was a big part of my portfolio, I guess.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I think people miss about physical therapy is how much personal interaction comes into play. Right? The psychology classes all of a sudden make sense. Like when I was going through, I was like, why do I have to take this?
Yeah.
Until you run into a certain patient, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
That's
now
why.
Yeah.
this
For
is how
sure.
I did it. So, I think it's a unique blend of science and people skills.
Yes, very much,
Right?
very much. And I think also that's why the whole interview process to get into PT school is weighed so heavily, because a lot of times these classes, these schools, they essentially want to see if you have those social skills to be able to communicate with multiple patients on a daily basis. And I think that's what that interview process is about, is showing your personality to the, you know, to and hopefully exceed above the rest of the candidates, is like, hey, does this person have people skills? Do they have a personality? And you know, can they kind of make it in this social realm? Because we do see patients a lot, and we have to communicate.
Anything, anybody,
Yes.
and everybody, and you never know, like, when they're having a good day or a bad day. Or,
You might be the only person they've like ever talked to.
Yeah.
Ever. So.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I think is unique, at least pretty much, except maybe AIDS, but is people are coming in pain, right? So that they're not like, that's their focus is like, look, I'm hurting, I need somebody to help me with this. So it's like, well, our person was kind of rude, or like, yeah, they're hurting. Like, you gotta understand.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And make it as enjoyable as possible.
Right.
That was my fear when I started heavy weighting PTs. Are you going to get a bunch of brainiacs that don't have the personal skills to do what we have to do? Because it's anything from teenagers to 90-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So you get in, so you apply, and then choose your school, right? Now there's more options than there used to be, because there's some hybrid programs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That are pretty cool.
Beauty is there's so many now.
I know.
So yeah, you might be having, I think for me specifically, I had to be okay with possibly moving away from, you know, my comfort zone or my family or my community, my city, and even my state, because it is so competitive. So I would definitely say explore, and if you get accepted into a great program in Arizona, like, don't be afraid to get up and move, because it is going to be a difficult 2 to 3 years of your life, but it'll definitely pay off in the end.
Yeah, I know when I went through my bachelor's degree and then my master's in athletic training, like going to 2 different schools, I was shocked at the difference in what you learn. So if you go in with that mindset of what more can I learn here that I didn't learn, then you start to see how much knowledge there is out there. So I think that's another interesting point of being comfortable with, yeah, you got to move away for a couple of years, but experience a new area, new school.
And it's only a couple of years, so if you want to go back, you can.
Exactly. Then you have that choice. So moving on to physical therapy school now. So for the ones that are in, so you get accepted, you get over the excitement part of acceptance, you get into the reality of the program. And I know when I went, they were like, okay, we had the big first meeting, it was the welcome, and they had speakers talking about, oh, yeah, this is going to be the hardest couple of years of your life. Don't start anything new. And freaked out about probably 80% of the people in the room.
I remember having that same thought when they first told me that first.
It's just like, it sets it up to be like,
like,
oh,
this
what
is
did I
serious.
get into? Yeah.
This is serious now.
So what would you tell, having gone through it, what advice would you give people that are in programs? And I think a lot of it's like balance, right?
Right.
Like, yes, it's intense. Yes, there's a lot of studying. But how did you guys keep some balance during that time?
Keep sane.
Yeah. Instead of just in the library 24/7.
What we were lucky. So I went to school in St. Augustine and San Marcos. So we were near the beach. We would always have kind of like a fun day where we just get together with the entire class and go to the beach and where we can decompress. But with the studying aspect, I would say I would recommend just making groups that you feel comfortable with. You can go to different houses, change the environment a little bit, go to like a coffee shop, study together that way. Just give your time to give yourself some time to like have a mental break, because then otherwise it's gonna be so overwhelming. It's just so much information you have to learn and such a short amount of time too. So
It's intense.
yeah.
I would say, just in summary, physical therapy, it was a beautiful chaos. There was so much going on, so much information coming in, yet I felt like the beauty in it was that your mind eventually got to understand all of it and kind of cope with the stresses of physical therapy school. Because I think one reason why physical therapy school can be so intensive and you feel like the information is piling up on you is your mind needs to be able to mature, and you need to be able to process decisions quickly. And I feel like you do that in physical therapy as a physical therapist, on a daily basis. So it just prepares you so much for the field itself, and having your mind just click and go to this certain specific skills or education that you learned from. Physical therapy for me was great, extremely hard, but I just felt like I had such a great experience with my cohort and with my professors that looking back, would I ever do it again? I would do it again, but would I ever go back again right now? Probably not, because it was the PTSD is still there, but it was great. Yeah, it's way too soon, but I mean, it was great because your cohort, this group of professionals, you're going to be spending the next 3 years of your life studying with these colleagues.
Literally, all the time.
So you kind of create a family-like environment with them. And it's great because I felt like ways for us to de-stress was just to like talk and hang out. And like she said, go somewhere different and do things. We would grind and get the education, the material that we needed, but we also try to give ourselves time to relax and get away from the book or get away from the computer. And just find a way to try to find balance in all of it, And I do think the beauty in it, there was times where we are all stressing, trying to prepare for an exam, yet all of us were kind of stressing together. And so it kind of felt like we were a team, working towards this final product.
Okay.
Yeah. So it made it okay for us to feel like we're on under a rock, we're ground zero, and we just don't know how to climb out of this. Yet you had your colleagues right there in the same situation as you, so you knew eventually it's going to work out. Yeah.
And I think it switches a little bit because of how hard it is to get into physical therapy school. But I think the switch for me was studying to understand more than studying to get a high grade on the test.
Yes.
That's a big one.
So different.
That's a big one.
So you switch from highly competitive, got to get high grades to get in, to being like, it doesn't matter how, like, at some point, you can't fail classes or you're out, but at some point it's like, no, I need to really understand this. And I think for me, at least, that's when it got easier. It's like, oh, wait, like you said, it starts to make sense and things start coming together. It's like, oh, okay, now I see.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I feel like for me, that happened around my year 2 of my program, where, first year you're getting the basic didactic knowledge, your anatomy, your physio, and all that, and everyone is kind of competing with each other because they want to get a great grade.
Yeah.
And then year 2 comes around, and it's like, all right, so you know all this information. Now you need to start applying it.
Right.
And this is where it's like, oh, it doesn't really matter about how much I know. It's how well do I know it, and how well can I present it in a clinical format.
Can I apply
exactly. And so for me, that's where I think my brain switched towards. I think early on it was more about memorizing the information, and now it was more so about understanding the information and how can I apply it to this setting. And I think that's where it started clicking, and I felt like almost at that point learning became easier, because I wasn't reading the same note over and over trying to memorize it in my head. I was reading it the first time and trying to figure out what it meant, how I could apply it, and then I feel like once I know how to apply it, it's stuck there forever. So I don't have to go back to that information. I know it's there, and if I can bring that information back out, I know I have it. So
Yeah, it's locked in, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's part of like at the end of it when everybody's getting ready for their test and everybody's now you're back in freak out mode, right?
Yes.
Okay, I gotta pass this test and you hear all the nightmare stories. I think that is what trips people up too. The test isn't made to be. It's made to. Do you understand this information?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. It's not made to be like this little specific tidbit of information from some obscure anatomical feature. It's like no, this is what's presented.
Yeah.
What do you do?
It's literally all applications. Like how, what are you doing to for this patient?
Yeah.
And
So I think people get tripped up on that too. Like,
yeah.
and what I try to tell people too is like, look, I know it's built up to be a big thing. It's just proving that you're safe to see patients, right? Like,
Yes.
you have the basic understanding that you can see patients and not cause
And not, yeah.
harm, right? It's like the
Yeah.
first rule of medicine, like, just don't cause harm, if nothing else. Right? So, and then I think it's the real learning, I think, occurs after, right? When all of a sudden you're thrown in to whatever setting you decide.
All your internships too, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
In the acute, I mean, going from acute with all the tubes and contraptions,
Everything.
is overwhelming the first time you. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, what do I gotta remember? Oh, I gotta remember the cath bag. I gotta remember the IVs. I gotta remember. Did I get it all? That's the worst thing. You start walking away and be like, oh wait, forgot the IV bag or forgot the catheter. Oh, sorry.
The learning
Let's turn
never
around
stops. Yeah, never stops.
Yeah, literally.
I was like, okay, I'm glad people do. I'm glad therapists like you were like, oh yeah, this is cool.
Yeah.
For me, I was like, yeah, give me the athlete with a blown knee. I don't have to worry about tubes and needles and everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah. I think the cool thing is like once you get it all down though, once you know exactly where everything goes, or you have maybe in your eyes a great connection with a patient and a flawless evaluation, and you treat them the proper way, or you're in the acute setting and you don't mess anything up and you get all the information you need and you set them up for a proper discharge, like it feels really good. And I feel like that's where you kind of realize like, oh yeah, I was kind of made for this, or I'm getting there. You know, I think we're all trying to get there in our own way, but I feel like that's awesome.
For sure.
I think that's the best part, right? Like, and then seeing patients years later still remember the impact you had on them. When you run into somebody be like, oh my god, you were my therapist. And I've been doing it so long now that it's like I go into any meeting and it's like,
You know somebody, yeah, you treated somebody.
you were my therapist. You worked on my shoulder. You worked on my. Okay, did it come out all right?
How are you now?
Exactly.
I didn't hurt you, did I?
Sure you have to, I mean, I don't ask him that because I hurt.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, you still remember? Oh yeah, I remember. You said, oh yeah, I'm gonna get it to move, and you got it to move. It's like, yeah, I told you.
That's beating it though. Now it's moving, so.
Yeah, so I got your back, and it's like anything in life where somebody makes an impact, and I think we lose that sometimes. To your point, the impact we make on people and how long it lasts for them, because they remember like, oh, I wasn't able to do this, and I went to these guys, and all of a sudden I could do it again.
Yeah.
Like, what a cool thing to hang your hat on, right?
Yeah, for sure.
No knocks on surgeons, but yeah, you did your role. But we got to take the whole package and put it back together.
Yeah. We're almost essentially the final steps, and it's great because we spend probably the most time with our patients, and so we probably have the most amount of influence where we can influence them positively or negatively. And I think I hang my hat on that. On the patient is here, whether it's post surgical or just here for an acute injury, and I have time to give them proper information, let them know where I plan on helping them throughout the journey, and making sure they're bought in on that process. And I think it's extremely beneficial that we spend so much time with our patients versus just a quick 8-minute check-in and give you this and then you're good to go.
Yeah, I think that connection is huge because I've always told patients like, yeah, look, part of this is going to stop, right? You're hurting, we got to get it moving.
Mm-hmm.
But know that it's with a plan in place. That yeah, right now this is it, but in a few weeks from now, you're not even. Oh, you might remember it, but it's at least it's how fast it can actually go for people.
Mm-hmm.
How shocked they are, like
When it actually works.
Yes.
it works, right?
That's
Like,
the best feeling.
Yeah.
comes in on crutches,
Exactly.
and they're just like, "Oh, am I ever gonna be able to run again?" It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I can't even walk. You're gonna be walking in like
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think going off of that, a lot of patients, I think maybe just subconsciously, they don't believe that we can help them to that degree.
Right.
And then you see in a couple weeks and they're doing things that they couldn't imagine themselves doing within that 2 or 3 week time span. And they're like, wow, you know what? And they say it a lot. They're like, I didn't know how much I believed, this could help me. And
Yes.
yet now I'm here walking out of these doors with no
What
assistance.
did you do?
What you do? Magic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's one part, at least I've always leaned on, is the whole kinetic chain, right? So if you have an ankle or knee in patient, you start talking about their hip, and they're like, "It's not my hip."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is.
It is,
We got to
very
fix
much
this
so.
whole
Everything.
thing. Or if I just focus on your knee pain, I can get the swelling down.
Yeah.
It's going to come right back because you got flat feet or your hip is weak.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything.
So let's go all the way up the chain. And a lot of times they're just,
They think it's baloney.
Yeah,
they're like, okay.
Yeah.
what are you talking about my hip,
Yeah.
my SI or my low back? It's like, well, that's where it's coming from. No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then you work on it, you drive it in them, and then they get up and they start moving around. And they're like, wow, like I've never
guess
felt
it
like this
was
before.
that.
And it's like, aha, that's that moment. I secretly love that moment.
Yeah.
That oh, wow.
For
That's
Like,
one of my favorites.
yeah.
Like, oh, let me guess, your hip's weak. So we were at an event last weekend, and I was with a doctor friend of mine, and he had a 12-year-old kid there. And he was talking about it. Loves to play soccer, and he's not fast enough. So not that it's appropriate, but go ahead and jog over there and back. You might have said, "Your right hip's weak." And even the doctor's like, "What?" His right hip's weak. He's like, "How did you know that?" And I go, "Watch how he runs. Like, watch where that knee goes when he plants."
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Like,
There you go.
Yeah.
and I think that, so at least being in it as long as I have versus new, I think part of what happens is as you start getting that experience, you start building those algorithms in your head, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
pretty soon it's like, okay, I know what to look at.
Mm-hmm.
And then people are shocked. They're like, how'd you know that? Because it's science mixed with experience, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I would say, like, when I was fresh out of PT school and working for the first year, I definitely feel like I had to go back to my schooling and my education so much more, to where now, like you said, we built those algorithms and those rhythms and those patterns to where I feel like you can almost catch it, as soon as you see it, and you already have a treatment for it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the beauty, is like, even now, even after we're out of PT school, we're still evolving and working on our practice.
Yes.
And I think that's where experience is so
I think
handy.
experience, mentorship, having somebody that's like, because you go through school and you learn, 30 special tests for the shoulder.
Mhm.
Yes.
And then as a new grad, you're like, I got to do all 30 of these.
On every patient.
And then
Yes.
patient.
Every single one.
So your eval's like an hour and a half long. I'm like, okay, what about this, and then pretty soon it's like, yeah, I think it's this, and I'll usually check a couple other things just to make sure. I don't want to jump ahead and miss it.
Mm-hmm.
But with a knee, there's all those special tests. But once you know that, okay, well, I actually saw a doctor. He's like, I think I tore my ACL. I was like, okay. Did Lockman's into your drawer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you didn't tear your ACL. But I got your PCL. And he's like,
Mm.
no. I was like, okay, let's review how it happened. He's like, well, I tripped and my knee pivoted and I popped my ACL. I said, did you hit the ground with your knee? He's like, yeah. It's like, it's your PCL. Come on, dude.
Mechanism of
It's
injury.
like, yeah,
There you go.
Like,
Yeah.
let's go back to my
Mhm.
mechanism and
Mhm.
it'll tell you where to look, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's very few things that are like, and the ones that you can't figure out are the ones that scare me.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like,
Oh,
man,
for
this
sure.
isn't making sense. Like where your pain is doesn't make sense with what I'm seeing. Those scare me because it's like, all right, what are we missing up higher? Is there?
Mm-hmm.
I've been in long enough where we had years ago a patient with knee pain. I was like, doesn't make sense. Send him back to the doc. Like this doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, he's got a little tear in his meniscus. When I looked at it, no, not that it was a little tear, but it's not enough to cause his pain. I was like, I'm telling you, something's going on. And they found out he had an osteosarcoma
Mm.
Oh, wow.
in his mid femur, but it was right in between
Oh, my
where
God.
the X-rays of the knee. It was above that, and X-rays of the hip. It was like
Oh.
Stuck
in
right
that
there
no
in
man's
that
zone
blind
of
spot.
That's
effect.
crazy.
Wow.
So I was like, I'm telling you, it's just doesn't make sense. What I see doesn't match the clinical picture. Right?
And unfortunately, the images
Right.
that they had
So
didn't
that's-
support it either because they
Yeah.
couldn't find it
Yeah,
in that.
real there.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, I think since we went to the DPT, we get a little more into the imaging and stuff, but it's like there's still gaps. Right?
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
Another friend of mine that's like, man, I got this weird thing in my hand, can't figure it out. They've MRI'd my neck, they've MRI'd my shoulder. It just doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
Maybe it's thoracic outlet. So I did a few tests.
Mhm.
Oh, I reproduced my pain. I was like, it's in between. Right?
Yeah.
Literally.
At least in your neck, it's that one little
Right
spot.
there. Yeah.
Mhm.
It doesn't get picked up.
Mhm.
So that's, I think, the cool part of understanding the body like we do in functional movements. It's like,
Mhm.
nah, if it's that, you should be seeing this.
Yeah.
If it's a pinched nerve in your neck, it should follow a pattern.
Pattern, and this isn't. I think that's
Yeah.
probably another beauty of physical therapy is
Mhm.
most MDs will probably base it off of, hey, you have a clinical presentation, let's do the proper imaging, let's test all these different outlets.
Right.
With physical therapy, we test musculoskeletal mechanism, injury, or clinical presentation, and then we go beyond that to hopefully try to find those gaps
Right.
where other professions might not be able to find it. So
Yeah. It's so hard because, like, patients don't ever just present with one thing either. They have
Yes.
so many multiple comorbidities, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how did you get here? How are you still walking and
Yeah.
moving around? Like, it's tough.
and then the beauty of it is like figuring out, okay, how do I treat this person
Yeah.
that has these skew of injuries,
Right.
but also have it tied to their comorbidities? Like, what's the
Yes.
best way to treat this person?
Yeah.
And it's difficult, but I feel like you definitely
Mhm.
have a proper way of finding that proper outlet of exercises or movements or mobilizations, manipulations that can help them
And I
out.
think to your point earlier, that's why establishing that relationship early with them. You know,
Mhm.
and I think the other thing, role we can play in physical therapy is we have the medical knowledge, but to be able to explain it to patients.
Yes.
And
That's
it's,
a big
the
thing.
language that they understand. And I'm
Yep.
like, well, you have an L4 disc bulge herniation that's pushing on your L5 nerve and it's causing a dermoconal pattern. All right, all right, look. It's pretty much gelatinous. It's when it moves out, it'll pinch the nerve.
Yeah.
But it's hydrostatic, so we can move it away. Everything's not surgical. I need surgery.
Mhm.
You know, maybe. I mean, I love the field because the primary care, right? At least we're hoping they're screening for all the bad stuff,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Cancers
Yeah.
and referral pain and all that stuff.
Mhm.
We still have to catch it a little bit. Like,
Mhm.
this could be referred from something internal
Yes.
because it doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
But I think, at least my big facility is just love to understand it. Where, look, I can explain it to you at a level that you can understand instead of using all the big words
Mhm.
because nobody's impressed with it anymore. But then being able to flip the script too, like I'll do that if I'm talking to
Yes.
an academic or
Yes,
a doctor.
yes,
If they're
exactly.
starting to push the verbiage, I'm like, okay, if you want to talk high
Let's
tech
go.
medical terms, let's
Yeah,
go.
we'll talk it. Yeah, and that's the beauty is being able to do
Yeah.
both. You can
Right.
Mm-hmm. speak the specific vocabulary and speak to someone that might be in the medical field, or just someone that I consider to be someone like my mother or my grandma who doesn't know
Right.
this terminology. Let me explain it to where they understand where we're going to take her and how we're going to help her. So I think, yeah.
I think that goes a long way in them being like, oh, okay, this is somebody I can trust. I mean, it's just, it's funny because over the years, like, I've been helping at BC for years and the head trainer for all those years. He's retired now, but he would always send me in these patients or athletes and be like, dude, I can't figure this one out. I'm like, all right, let me take a look at it. So I told him one time, like, hey, you always have to send me the hard stuff. It's like, well, if it was easy, I'd have figured it out. So I'll send it to you. But it was funny the number of times that, depending on how you ask the question and the answer you get back, like, oh, have you ever been hurt before? So the all-time classic, I don't know if I've told you guys a story, but when I first opened the first Terrio clinic, this lady came in and wanted to know about our workout programs. So I said, well, something a little off. I was like, have you ever been hurt before? She said, no, not like an injury. I said, yeah. She said, no. Well, I fell off my bike one time. I said, oh, were you injured? She said, not from the fall, but when the car ran over my head.
Oh.
Excuse me, what did you just say? The car skimmed your head? She's like, no, it went over top my head.
Oh my god.
I had to have a bunch of surgeries, put my head back together. I was like, okay, that classifies as an injury.
Yes.
So when people ask
a major
me, have
injury.
you ever had an injury? I'd lead with that. I had a major traumatic skull fracture.
Yes.
Like, oh, okay. All right, we're gonna need a note from your doctor before we
come and treat you.
before we start doing any exercises.
And the beauty in it was that you asked those extra questions to get
Like,
to
sure?
that answer.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you've never
because-
had an injury? Okay, come on in.
Mhm.
Which
Right.
is what scares me about some fitness centers. It's like, I know they're trained and they got certified trainers, but people don't always tell you exactly
Nope.
what's going on.
You have to dig. You have to,
for
you
sure.
really have to dig.
And even with athletes, it's like,
Mhm.
hey, have you ever been hurt? Because I'd go up and help do physicals and be like, hey, looking at your past medical history, I don't see anything about your shoulder. Oh, yeah, I was the one that rehabbed you, so I know that you had a shoulder problem.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, I forgot to put that down. Like, okay, dude. Like,
That's important.
They need the whole history, not
Yeah.
what you think they want to know. But I think we get that a little bit in our world too.
Mhm.
Oh, no, I've never really had anything bad. So, okay, well, give me some ideas of what you got.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw my back out every so often. I can't move for a few days. Like, okay, that's significant. How many
Yeah.
times?
Yeah.
How often? Is it getting more frequent? Oh yeah, it's happening more.
Mhm.
All right, you're probably heading down the disc world. Let's figure this out. So I think it's back to the psychology part of it. It's like learning the patients too. Right? Which ones do you have to? Well, two ways. The ones you've got to ask more questions to, and the ones you've got to like rein.
Yes.
Brain back in.
Yeah.
That's very,
Yes.
very true.
All of a sudden you get the patient
Yes.
like, okay, well, in first grade,
Yeah.
I fell off the monkey bar. Okay, wait. I don't
I
need.
get that a lot.
I don't need a running history.
So
a
funny
lot.
how we can relate to all of this.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can ask any physical therapist this, and they have seen patients on both ends of the
Both
spectrum.
One you can't get anything out of, and the other
Nope.
one that's just like, okay, pump the brakes. I need the Reader's Digest version of this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cut to the highlights for me real quick. You know?
Mhm.
I think but it's just the different people.
Yeah.
And
That's why every evaluation is unique. So
Oh, yeah.
I think that's why you have to cater your program and your evaluation differently to
Right.
each patient.
Yes.
I
Because,
think
yeah.
that's that learning curve too, right?
Mhm.
Because it's
Yeah.
when you learn it in school, it's kind of a sterile.
Mhm.
So
evaluation.
different. So
Mhm.
different.
And you're also working on the other students, so they're trying to mimic like
Yes.
until you actually see, oh, this is what it presents like. Oh, this is what a positive test feels like. And you're like, oh, well, if it moves 10 millimeters, then it's positive. It's like,
What does that mean?
Yeah. What is that?
until the
You
first
feel
time
like-
it happens, you're like, whoa,
There you go.
Yes.
You felt that laxity?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
nothing's shifting more than I think it should be shifting.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, all right, so you get through school. What would you say? So, because part of the world too, right? You're wrapping up your end of PT school. You start getting hammered with every recruiter, every
Mhm. Mhm.
every headhunter, every recruiter, every person looking to hire a therapist. How did you guys work through that process of how do you make that initial decision of because I mean they're in short supply, right? So you're going to get
You're gonna get offers. You're gonna get offers. The beauty of physical therapy is they're so high in demand. You're gonna get offers everywhere. So how do you pick and choose the right one?
Weed through that to figure out?
I think for me, it was a little bit easier because I went to my program was based in Los Angeles, and I knew I wanted to come back home. You know, I just had a very strong familial support here. All my loved ones were here, and I wanted to treat my community. So I knew I wanted to find a way back to Bakersfield. There's still a lot of physical therapy corporations here in Bakersfield. So definitely going through the interview process and taking your time to feel out each one and figuring out what their priorities are or the way they work around. Because of course, like me personally, I never wanted to be put into a physical therapy mill, as they call it, where you're just treating patients nonstop and it's the same repetitive cycle back and forth. I wanted to feel like there was customization and there was support for the physical therapist, and you know, there were a lot of different avenues where you can go and explore physical therapy. And luckily I found the right one, being with Terrio. But I think for me, what helped me with my decision was going through the process, talking to other colleagues that are in physical therapy, and essentially kind of just trusting my gut and to seeing which one works the best. And of course, for other people, it might be different, where the first physical therapy job they have might not be the one for them. But knowing that there are so many opportunities that you should always never close your door on any one opportunity. You should always go ahead and explore, especially if you're not currently enjoying the clinic that you're in or the profession that you're in.
It's like anything, and that's what we've always been mindful of. Is it's not just you can set the clinic up, but it's the chemistry of the clinic and how one bad person can mess up the chemistry, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be all good people, but they just don't gel together, right? There's just something off a little bit. So it's always like, okay, where does this person fit in?
Right. That's hard.
Yeah, because then you got to find, these guys really connect. And I know you kind of had a rocket ship ride, right? Came from being a physical therapist and a clinical manager.
It happened really quickly, yeah. But I think it was just loving the clinic that I was in, having the proper support staff, having the proper mentors and resources to go to, and it kind of just happened in a very fast trajectory. But yeah, I think looking back at it now, like when we have new grad PTs coming in, you know, I feel like I can give them a little more information because I feel like I was just once there 3 or 4 years ago, you know, so it's still kind of fresh. And I feel like it can help guide the learning process and just the affiliation with the company a lot easier.
So similar to Garmin, like I have family here, so I knew I wanted to come back to Bakersfield. I was lucky to get my last internship at a rehab facility here, and I truly enjoyed it. And it was interesting because my school was so heavily ortho based, and that I was like, oh, I'm going straight to ortho for sure, like straight after. But once I did the internship at the rehab place, I fell in love. Like it was so different, and like I learned so much from there. And that's kind of where I was like, okay, I think I want to start here first. And I knew that there were so many other opportunities, so I wasn't tying myself to one place. And I was always like, okay, I can definitely try outpatient later, try this later. So that's kind of what I did after my first 2-3 years there. And I was like, okay, time to explore some different places. So
check it out.
Yeah, and I think that helped me be where I am now.
I think I tell people when they're asking me, it's like, hey, be careful as you're coming out. If somebody's out offering you a lot of money, that means that they're going to expect a lot of productivity, right?
Yes.
Or you're going to be out in some remote location by yourself without mentorship, without support, versus, you know, realize that, hey, let me get my feet wet in this, or, you know, in whichever field you jump into, right? Like, it is the cool part of therapy, though, right? I think I wanted go acute first. And back when I was in school, they used to say like, "You're not a real physical therapist if you don't do acute first." And
That was his
okay,
thing.
whatever. Yeah, I was the guy. That, apparently, they didn't see me because they were like at the first big meeting. They're like, "Does anybody here definitely think they're going orthopedic and sports?" I was like, "It's like, yeah, it's usually some ex-jock that was like, oh, easy."
Taking shots.
Yeah.
Taking shots.
Like, all right, you might want to like. I get that might be the normal vibe, but you might want to ask a few questions first.
Yeah.
Make a judgment.
Mhm.
Realize I've already been a professional athletic trainer. Like I'm in this for one reason only. Like,
Mhm.
I want to become a PT. I just want to work in air conditioning instead of 100-degree
Yeah.
baseball games.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a much better way to go.
For sure.
So now, because the big buzz is always like balance, right? So what do you guys do now for maintaining that? Because it's still a lot of brain power, right?
A lot. Mm-hmm.
So you still get
Yes.
that mental drain for the day. So how do you guys recharge? What do you do to balance?
Well, actually, I went to like a 32-hour work week, and that has helped significantly. And
We don't recommend that.
I'm sorry, yeah. Totally. No, but I'm able to go home and cook, and I love cooking. I love hanging out with my friends. That's kind of how I decompress, and I just hang out on the couch. Like, I'm a couch potato, and I'm like a very like homebody, so I just like decompress by just hanging out at home and cooking. So
That's cool. And I think the beauty in it is with physical therapy, you have the flexibility
Yeah.
to set those specific hours or to work at a certain location and then to work in a different, niche of physical
Yes.
therapy and still be able to get enough hours to where you feel like you're maintaining a proper
Mhm.
income, so
Yep.
that's pretty cool.
So it's just, what about you for balance?
For balance, I think right now the day-to-day it gets grueling, but right now with the specific clinic that I'm in, our colleagues, the other physical therapists, the aides, we just have a really good type of culture in there where even when we're working, it almost reminds me of PT school. Like even during the times where it's really, really busy, we're all still kind of with each other,
Right.
and the beauty in it is the other physical therapists, we'll talk about certain cases, especially if it's a case that's intriguing. Like my fellow colleague just had a patient that was positive for myelopathy that wasn't screened properly, during their MD visit. And so did the proper tests. We talked about it, did some more tests, and we're like, hey, this patient right now is not appropriate for physical therapy. They need to go back to their doctor and have some further tests. And sure enough, they did. It was positive, and now they're getting the proper treatment. And it's like being able to brainstorm with other colleagues and get to the right solution. It's really cool because it's different from the day-to-day, and you definitely feel like you are, helping somebody truly, especially when they kind of slip through the cracks and they don't get the proper screening.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part of. We talked about the algorithms earlier, but it's really the negative side of that is when it starts becoming too automatic
Mm-hmm.
and you start missing those things
Mhm.
because it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I know, all right, here's what you do. But not being afraid to loop back and be like, wait a minute, this isn't responding the way I thought it should.
Mhm.
So what's
Mhm.
really going on here? And then
Mm-hmm.
dig a little deeper into, oh wait, or in that case, it's a brilliant catch because it's like,
yeah.
this could have gone bad,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but just having that belief in your own knowledge system to say, no, something's not
Something
right
doesn't
about
add
this.
up here. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think, and they get upset like, oh, I want to ask them about. So then there's the political dance in the insurance and medical world of how do we ask for this without creating any headaches?
Mm-hmm.
But it really is like we're a failsafe, and now especially that we got what we asked for, we're a lot of times the first line,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right? Like somebody has back pain, the insurance company's like, well, we'd rather send you to therapy 1st.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where you really got to be on your toes. Like, well, wait a minute.
That's where
Gotta
that's why we're essentially getting doctorates now, is to have the
Mhm.
ability and the education and the background to screen those patients to see if they're appropriate or not.
Yeah, and not be afraid to say, no, all right, we did one or two, and
This isn't. Yeah.
this is more unstable
Mm-hmm.
than I thought, or this needs further follow up, right?
Yeah. And I think along with that, just of course, the culture is great, but I think also one thing that's great about my clinic is our clinic is we encourage taking time off because physical therapy can be very grueling. So it's like, hey, like, we talk about our upcoming vacations, hey, you're going to Hawaii for your baby moon. Like, hey, tell me where you're going. I have some spots for you to go check out. This is what I did. Or, hey, you're going to be, have you ever been to Seattle? No, you should go to Seattle. And we kind of encourage like, hey, this is a grueling time. And most of the colleagues in our clinic love to travel. So we kind of give each other a little bit of energy to be like, hey, like, your vacation is coming up, where are you going to go? And here are some cool ideas to go do.
Or you're just going to the couch. I mean, that's
exactly.
too,
Either
right?
or. Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes I'll hang out with like our coworkers. Like we hang out after work and just go to like a place and eat dinner and just hang out and talk and kind of decompress that way too. Honestly, that's pretty fun. And like I said, we're all about the same age, I feel, and like we're able to hang out with each other and share experiences and stuff too. So
and that's in a lot of work environments that's not the case.
Right. And yeah, I feel like we're very lucky and privileged to have that, so it's nice.
Exactly.
Cool. So any last minute advice for somebody looking at the field, going into the field? How would you sum up, like, here's what you need to focus on? How would you tell them, like, what's the main thing?
First of all, try to find your passion.
Right.
Truly find your passion, and of course, you might not find it on the first go around. But I would advise go back to your roots and what you truly enjoy or where your background was. What did you love to do, throughout your adolescence and into adulthood, and allow that to be kind of like a guide to where you can find your passion. And if your passion is physical therapy, then definitely get the proper means, proper advice, and definitely get the schooling. The great thing now, like I mentioned earlier, was via social media, via YouTube, there are so many different outlets you can go to. One of my classmates, he on his side hustle, essentially, besides just treating patients, is he helps people get into physical therapy school. So he's like the pre-PT school type of person where he'll give you the information and the education. He'll look through it all, and then he'll help guide you. He'll discuss, so it's great. That's just me saying that there's so many different outlets you can go to, so you can find an outlet where you can get the proper education towards, hey, you need to focus on these classes, you need to work on this, you need to get your entrance exam essay, proofread, whatnot. So I think finding your roots, finding your passion, and then definitely honing in on community service education and getting your application to be the most perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Picking back off of what Garmin was saying, like finding that passion, but also making different connections with all these different people that you meet throughout your life, because you never know what they can help with you along the way. Like they can help you, like, I don't know, find different connections to doing what you really want to do. Like I feel like I wish I knew back then, before I started, was to meet as many different people as possible in order to get their stories and kind of grow from that as well into the passion that I have now. Because I feel like now I'm very into like meeting different people, learning about their stories, and then how I can help them as a therapist and moving forward from there. So make those connections like early on and continue doing what you actually love to do. Because if you just work to work, then that's not going to make you happy, and you're going to be like very miserable in the end.
Well, once you're a physical therapist, though, and people know it, you get the occasion like, "Hey, are you a physical therapist?" So anyhow, I have this.
All the time.
That too.
And the funny thing is,
my shoulders.
I'm like, make an appointment.
Can you release my shoulders? Kind of not.
The funniest thing is, half the time, or more than half the time, it's your own family.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
It's,
it's
your,
always your
it's your
family.
immediate family. It's your aunts, your uncles, your brothers, your
Can't you come in
cousins.
the clinic?
Yeah.
Oh, can't you just work on me
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
Or something?
It's Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. It's Christmas. We're having dinner, and you want me to work
Can't you
on
bring
you.
a table? Like,
Yeah.
no, because I don't want a table.
Mhm.
I can't make it too comfortable or too accessible. 'Cause
Man.
It's gonna be like,
Yeah.
oh, crap. I don't go over and you say, "Oh, you're an accountant." Anyhow, here's my taxes.
Exactly,
For some
exactly.
reason, it's-
Yeah, we love what we do, so we
Yeah.
help you anyway.
Yeah, all right, let's take a look. Get on the pool table.
Mhm.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. And I appreciate all the advice you give because I think it's just that if you think back to that time, it's like, because I didn't come from anybody that was in the medical field. So when you start getting into it, it's like, is this the right thing?
Yeah,
Am I
almost
doing the right
overwhelming.
thing? Is,
Yeah.
is this really what I should be doing? But I agree. Like, if it's your passion, you'll know. Right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the classes start getting easier. It starts making sense. And it's like, oh, I got this.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
When you flip that switch, like you were talking about, where you go from just regurgitation to understanding,
Yeah.
Mhm.
all of a sudden it's like, oh,
The aha moment.
now I know I had to memorize all that crazy stuff. Right?
Mhm.
So, I think you guys are awesome. Appreciate you guys
Thanks for
doing
having
this.
us.
I think the food should be.
All right.
Side of
All
course,
right.
I'm
That's perfect. That's
Awesome.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having us. This
Yeah.
was fun.